Britain has a density problem. Wait, I know. Oh no, not again. I click on a random YouTube video and it's some nutter ranting about immigrants again. No, thank you. Oh look, thumbnail for a train and a picture of an attractive girl looking at the camera. Hey, click. Whoops, I've probably caused a lot of people to click off right away by starting with this, haven't I? Just to put that baby to rest, and being a baby, of course it won't stay there. It's going to wake up 12 times in the course of the video, screaming for some milk and nappy change, or, you know, just for a laugh, because babies have a weird and masochistic sense of humour. Just to put that baby to rest, and be perfectly clear, Britain has a density problem, and this problem has basically naught to do with immigration. So, rest assured, if you just bear with me here, this video has absolutely naught to do with asylum seekers or riots or Brexit or out like that. However, as silly as it is worth recognising that the country is full meme has really seeped out into the public consciousness. There are certain people who, for reasons, have decided that we all need to believe that immigration is somehow the most important issue in the country, and they really heavily push this one. We're endlessly bombarded with this rhetoric. It's seeped down into our bones to such an extent that no matter your view of foreigners, a lot of people just take it as read that the UK is an especially built up and overcrowded country. Believe it or not though, Britain isn't full at all. Rather, when you look into it, one of the core fundamental issues of the UK, one of the root causes of so much that's wrong in this country, is actually that our population density is just too low. Britain has a density problem. Oh wait, we've done that bit already. Getting on with it then. So now you're probably thinking, just who is this soy sauce chugging doylem? In what universe does Britain have a low population density? And why would that even be a problem if it were true? As yeah, I know, what I'm saying really does sound quite mad and counterintuitive. Where's that love of data I do so profess? There's one basic bit of data, probably comes right to mind when you speak about Britain's population density. That is, if you look at national figures, then the UK, taken as a whole, if we exclude micronations of course, is the 4th most crowded country in Europe, right behind Turkey, the Netherlands and Belgium. And while we're at it, here's a standard argument that I often see people throwing out. Let's ignore the whole UK numbers. I mean the Scottish Highlands, man, it's home to only what, like 5 people? It really distorts the numbers. Hell, let's throw out all of Scotland and Wales. Because reasons. Northern Ireland's complete myth, doesn't exist, never has. Let's just take the numbers for England. And where will you look at that? Isn't that England all over? Knocked into 2nd place by the dodgy refereeing decision of including Turkey. I mean, it's ridiculous, isn't it? Including Turkey on a list of European countries. Most of the countries in Asia. Just 3% of the countries in Europe. You can't just pick and choose the European bit like that and forget the rest. I mean, yeah, we are sort of doing that with England, but that's different. The majority of Turkey isn't in Europe, so there. Turkey is not Europe. England is number 1, densest land in all of Europa. England is full. Though, if we put that caricature at the side, if we're looking at England separate to the rest of the UK, why can't we do this for other countries? So instead of the Netherlands, why not just look at Holland? It's not Germany, it's North Rhine-Westphalia, and so on and so forth. I mean, aye, sure, you might argue that England has its own football team, thus is special. But in terms of actual autonomy, you'll find a lot more of that in the lands of Germany than those of the UK. On that note, this is Barcelona. Maybe you've heard of it. It's a canny town. If you've not done so already, then why not give it a visit? It's got Sagrada Familia, the Dali Garden, the new camp, and most famous of all, the thing that brings in visitors from all around the world, the most densely populated square kilometre in Europe. There's our 53,000 people living in the old city of Barcelona. That's 121 times as much as England's measly and apparently overcrowded 438. Aye, wait a minute, that's hardly fair, is it? You're comparing an entire country to a major city. And yeah, quite right. But why is it that England and Spain are the only right level to look at when speaking about population density, while say Greater London or Manchester or Madrid or Barcelona isn't? You'll have already noticed this when comparing countries, that if we do include the micronations, then Monaco absolutely dominates the rankings. Look at the overall rankings of German states, and it's the city-states which are way ahead at the top of the table. And that, amigos, is exactly the point I'm getting at here. National population density is bollocks. As those who insist on using the English numbers over the UK numbers already recognise themselves, Does it really matter that there's vast stretches of the Scottish Highlands that are hoping out but sheep and cows and moss? That's not where all the people are. This is a well understood problem. Though the man on the street may look towards national population density numbers and say that the UK is second in Europe, the actual experts in this sort of thing do nothing of the sort. They recognise that for most purposes this is a pretty meaningless number. Instead, different and more detailed methodologies are used. One of these is the global human settlement layer, which maps the population density of the entire Earth, by cutting up the whole planet into square kilometres and measuring the density of each of those. The result of this is a far more accurate reading on population density that actually reflects the lived reality of people on the ground. Looking at the raw national numbers, for instance, you get Canada way down in position 237 out of 248. The country is almost literally empty. By these numbers, if you live in Canada, then the odds are against basically ever meeting someone you're not related to. But is this the reality for most Canadians? Do they all really live in a place with 4 people per square kilometre? Of course not. Canada isn't just some vast expanse of maple trees where everyone lives equally spaced out in little wooden huts, as cosy as that might sound. Canada does have cities of a sort. Canada even has housing issues, which is food for thought if you're inclined to insist that the British housing crisis is because the country is full. Okay, so on a technicality that national population density is pretty stupid, we can say that the British population density is not too high then. But something being false doesn't automatically mean that the opposite is true. How on earth is Britain's population density too low? How can population density even be too low? I mean, people suck, don't they? Low population density means that you have more space for yourself. We all want our 100-room mansion with extensive grounds and flamingos and stuff. Think about it logically though. A higher population density means that people are closer together. This in turn often tends to mean that facilities are a lot more accessible for those people. If you're into computer games, you'll be familiar with this logic. Place your services where their circle covers the most housing. It works in reality too. More people within range of your park, your school, your pub or whatever it might be, means more people can use it. With a higher density, you need fewer facilities to serve the same amount of people. This gives cost benefits, which could be spent on making better facilities for those people. Pretty similar reasoning whether you're on about the council or the private sector. When you have more potential customers nearby, it becomes a lot more viable to open a business. As well as facilities, this all goes for infrastructure too. Roads, pipes, electric wires, all that sort of thing. If you have a mile of road, and how much maintenance you have to do in it, it is impacted by the amount of traffic it gets. But there's also a base cost from just building the thing and weather-related damage and general temporal decay, and that's the same no matter how much it gets used. But as you might expect if you've watched my videos before, or you're familiar with my sort of online weirdo, the argument for higher density that really excites me is how it makes better forms of transport viable. It's not something where it's a definite, absolute rule, but one study found that you need 5,000 people per square kilometre or so for a bus service to be truly viable, 7,000 for a tram or light rail, and 11,500 for a full metro or heavy rail. There is a very good reason why London has the underground, whilst in stand-up you get a bus every hour if you're lucky. But don't just take my word for it. According to official UK government research and policy, specifically the imaginatively named PPG-3 report from way back in 1999, low density is defined as 20 to 25 dwellings per hectare. That's 2 to 2,500 per square kilometre. With an average household size of 2.36 people, that gives about 5,000 people per kilometre square. This report specifically states that such low densities is very difficult to sustain standard local services, and it should be avoided, with 30 homes per hectare as absolute bottom level minimum to aim for. Interestingly, at the time of this report, half of all new housing development in the UK was at a density of under 20 dwellings per hectare. Just think about that, half of all development was half of the minimum needed to be able to provide basic services. Now many would say the UK is struggling to provide basic services. The government actually did improve on this. The 2001 average of 25 dwellings per hectare went up to 46 in 2009. Then we had the financial crisis and a change of government. In 2010, this recommended national minimum of 30 dwellings per hectare was thrown out. Since then, national numbers have been hard to come by. You have to look at local numbers instead. Numbers from Blackpool, for example, in 2019 showed that 40% of new builds were at sub 30 dwellings per hectare. Signs suggest there has been a similar backsliding elsewhere in the country too, but hey, it's not like we've been building much housing at all, is it? Most of the housing in our cities is what's already been there since before the millennium, innit? Anyway, I could talk all day about why denser is better. That's really something for another day. For now, let's put aside our views about whether density is good or bad. If we just look at the data, we'll see a pretty clear difference between Britain's cities and those of our peers. Now, I am a busy man. Ish. Sort of. You know how it is. This data is all out there, and given the time and motivation, I could go and properly figure out QGIS and set up Python scripts and all that, but I'm lazy. So rather than faffing directly with the human settlement layer data, I instead looked at this site, Luminous City 3D, where they've already parsed it in a way that I need. After the video, you can go and check it out for yourself. It's fun. I mean, you know, if you're watching this video, you probably will think it is fun. So on this site, for starters, let's look at London. You can see London is selected here. Below, you've got the overall citywide data. 11.1 million people, 10,000 per square kilometre. The 36th most populated urban area in the world, apparently. But what I'm really looking at here though isn't the data for the city overall, but its breakdown by population group that you see on the chart. The x-axis shows the groupings, the ranges of population density, and the y-axis is how many people in the London urban area live somewhere which has that density. So you can see there's a few people living at a density over 22,000 per square kilometre, but the biggest amount of people is found in the 5 to 7k range. That's nearly 2 million people living in this pretty low density. If I move my mouse to the right, you'll see that this site also contains data for the great metropolis of Southend-on-Sea, 1401st biggest urban area in the world. It's quite a bit smaller than London. I'm surprised its data is even on here, to be honest. You'll also see that its overall population density spread is skewed a lot more to the left than London's is. The biggest category is 3 to 5k, and there's nobody at over 12,000. The numbers on the left too are quite a bit smaller than London, tens of thousands as opposed to hundreds of thousands. Now, bar charts are nice for some uses. You can sort of eyeball them and get an idea of things, but the best sort of chart to use here, I reckon, is a pie. It gives a far clearer visual that lets us compare cities easier. So here's London again. I've colour-coded things so that the blues mean density is too low, greens meh, enough-ish, and then it goes up through red to purple for borderline factory farming levels. For comparison, since we've mentioned it already, let's do the same with Southend. And who would have thought it? Cockney Whitley Bay is less dense than London. The good thing about using pie charts here, as well as reminding them about pie, is that it lets us compare the densities of two cities of very different sizes. Looking back to London then, just look at all the blues and greens there. If you're out like me, then based on your own personal observable reality when you get into London, the place is just much too crowded. It's not something you want other British cities to copy. It's maybe a key part of the reason why you don't live in London. Or, you know, if you do live in London, then may the gods have mercy on your soul. Assuming you have one, that is. No offence to any Cockney vampires out there. But honestly, my impressions looking at this data is that London is a lot less dense than you might expect. More than half the city is beneath the level that I just said you need for a viable metro system. Which, yeah, underground much. I do reckon though that most northerners' vision of London is pretty tainted by the fact that when we do visit there, we usually just get the bits where all the stuff is. A lot of that is around the centre, where there'll be reds and purples here, or as particularly the case around the city, there'll be a huge difference between their daytime worker population and the residential population. Incidentally, this also explains the underground. Most of the tube maps focused around these central bits, with the high populations and high visitor numbers. The bits stretching out to cockfosters and the like. Cockfosters. They're not quote-unquote viable. They don't turn a direct profit, even when the system overall does. Which, I need to highlight, isn't a good enough argument against their existence. Public transport doesn't exist just to turn a direct profit for those operating it. The indirect value it brings is something that my previous mentioned minimums didn't really consider. But anyway, who cares about London, right? London represents the UK as a whole, about as well as this Pikachu does. If you're interested in London, the underground and all that, then Christ, you've got your pick of books and YouTubes and merchandise and everything, you know? Everything's London. More importantly, here's what the Newcastle Sunderland urban area looks like. And quite a difference, isn't it? There's no red or yellow. Green's the best we get. Less than a quarter of the area just about barely meets the standards for a viable bus service. But we do have a metro, you might scream. And we all know fine well how much that struggles. Well, you know what? This chart goes quite some way to explain why. But so much of the area even falls below the levels of viability for bus service will also give you some insight into quite why the buses are so terrible around here. The key word in that insight, by the way, is privatisation. Looking at some other British cities for comparison then, from most important to least important. Here's Teesside. There's Leeds. Manchester. Birmingham. Well, that's not Birmingham, that's I don't know what that is. That's Birmingham anyway. Considering these are bigger cities and Middlesbrough, because, well, this isn't a Cockney accent, is it? You can see the general state of the UK. it consistently fails to meet the minimum standard of 5,000 or so. And again, it really has to be highlighted, these are major urban areas. Only 54% of the British population actually lives in cities. For the rest of us, expect the density to be much, much lower. There are some places that positively stand out from the crowd in the UK. Here's Edinburgh and Brighton. But these are very much exceptions to the general rule of British failure on building a sufficient density. And since we've included Edinburgh, let's also look at Belfast, which, yeah, pretty typical British spread. And also Cardiff, which... well, you can see hints of something better here. It's not in the same league as Edinburgh or Brighton, but it clearly does have a better density spread than most British cities. Way to go, Cardiff. Daiwan Hui. I apologise to your language. Oh, and because I'll get nutted if I miss them, here's Glasgow and all. And, oh god, I probably should have missed them out, because, sorry lads, but that's just shocking that. Britain is not the world. For some actual comparison of where British cities stand, let's look abroad. Tyne Wear is home to just over 1 million people. So let's look at some of our peers overseas. The Centre for Cities has identified the 5 most similar cities in terms of size and economy to Newcastle, so that seems a good place to start. First, Rotterdam/Den Haag. Yeah, you can see a bit of a difference, but do bear in mind here that Rotterdam's pretty infamous in the Netherlands for being a particularly sprawly, car-focused city by their standards. Also, there is a disclaimer on the data that the Dutch data just isn't very good and probably underestimates things. Moving on though, here's Bordeaux in France. This city has a pretty tight core, but then it sort of sprawls out. It's not perfect by any means, but it does have basically a third of its population at a decent density, whilst in the UK a quarter is more standard. Next, Nantes, or Nantes, the historic capital of Brittany in France. As much as it pains me to say something nice about the French, they do a lot right when it comes to building their cities. You can see there's a bit of a step up here, 43% living at over 5,000 per square kilometre. And worth noting, Nantes does this whilst being a city well known for having a lot of green space. Staying in France? Nice. I've been there. It's genuinely nice. Honestly, not sure how to link this one to Newcastle, but again you can see getting up towards half of the population at over 5k densities. Going on to Spain and Bilbao, and wow, that's very different. Tyneside and a lot of other post-industrial cities in the UK and beyond have often looked towards Bilbao as the one to copy. Bilbao successfully regenerated its post-industrial economy and built a lot of jobs for regular people off the back of cultural investment. It's also home to Athletic Bilbao, a team formed by coal miners from Sunderland. You'd never have guessed. Honestly, I've never been to Bilbao, but it's definitely on my list of places to visit. It's clear to be seen from its data that it's a completely different place to British cities. There's so many differences in climate and culture and all that sort of thing, but what we can learn here will be a bit more limited than comparing to places further north. But still, surely there's something we can learn from the Iberians. That's the places that the Centre for Cities says are the most similar to Newcastle then. But worth noting, they look at Sunderland separately and it has its own list. So let's take a quick look at that. First, there's another Frenchie, Tours/Tours. It's interesting to compare it to other French cities. It has a smaller percentage overall, it's over 5k, but a significantly bigger chunk in the higher densities above that. Then we've got Gdansk, Poland's famous old shipbuilding city, historically also known as Danzig. Now, Sunderland and Gdansk is one of those cross-Europe comparisons where you can really see what they were thinking. In terms of population density though, Poland does it a fair bit better. Staying in Poland, you got there's no rock star links to joke about here, but damn it, the old German name's just so much easier. Stettin, right? And wow, this is a really great distribution. Absent of any other information here, always a mistake, always research holistically, this is a nigh on perfect distribution, offering an equal choice of every level. Not sure why 12 to 16k is suspiciously missing their data though. But gold star.
Szczecin.
Anyway, next on Sunderland's list, you've got Mulhouse, right down there in the Switzerland, Germany corner of France. This city's urban area is unfortunately too small to give any numbers on this site. It's usually grouped together with Basel in Switzerland, but there's actually quite a significant gap between the two. Also grouped into this set, you usually get Freiburg in Germany, again a city too small for its data to show up, but I will note that this is a city you hear a lot of good things about in urbanism circles. A very green, cycle-friendly university city. Staying in Germany then, the last city that Sunderland's likened to is a place which famously does not exist. Bielefeld. And man, way to destroy my everywhere on the continent is better than Britain shtick, Germany. I mean, Christ, can't trust you guys to do anything. Germany is, yeah, it's a diverse country. It's the land of the autobahn, where the automotive industry is all powerful. Lots of car-centric living to be found. At the same time, Berlin. I mean, compare Britain and Germany on a national level, and you see that Britain actually does seem to show higher density on average. How about that then? We beat Germany. That's all that matters. But then France. That's embarrassing. Anyway, as I say, at a national level, even if this sort of breakdown isn't the best thing to look at. Moving on. Though the Centre for Cities has provided us with a decent enough list, let's take a look at some cities and countries that have a vibe in common with Britain. Why first, the obvious one, Dublin. You'd never have guessed most of 20th century Ireland's planners studied in Britain, would you? Another obvious one's Amsterdam, and you can clearly see how much better than Rotterdam it is, can't you? I actually lived in Amsterdam for a time, and I have often wondered if I could have found a way to make it stick. Hot take, never before heard in the corners of the internet for people who are into urbanist issues. Amsterdam's canny nice. All is not golden from the Netherlands, alas. I've mentioned that the Dutch numbers are probably underestimates in this dataset, but still, at another Dutch city, Eindhoven, and oh gosh, that's looking a lot more British. Eyeballing the Netherlands on a map and looking at its national numbers, and yeah, I do suspect as much as Amsterdam's a poster child for awesomeness, the country overall is not too much better than the UK in this. So, hopping across the border, Antwerp, Brussels, Charleroi, Cha-cha-cha. Interesting to see a Flemish Wallon difference here. I'm resisting the urge to drive too far off topic, but yeah, I am well aware that these Dutch and Belgian numbers sort of disrupt my whole point that Britain has uniquely awful density. I mean, they have managed to build great public transport and cycle networks despite the shared Northwest European love of building low. I'm not saying in all this that fix your density and it's all sunshine and rainbows, but it certainly does help a lot. And that goes for the Dutch too, that they've accomplished so much in spite of their low densities. We just think what they could achieve if they tightened up a smidge. Aye, I know, unsolicited advice for countries that have their act together, I'm your man. Nipping up to Scandinavia then? Oslo? Stockholm? Copenhagen? Göteborg? Malmö? Interesting, isn't it? Okay, so Denmark's not very big, and Norway's full of mountains. But Sweden is actually a really big country with lots of flat, reasonably fertile land suitable for building. Yet it manages to be really efficient with its urbanisation. Even in its small towns that keep things efficient, they keep their towns tight and compact and livable. I remember when I lived in Uppsala, fourth biggest city in the country. I was a 10-minute bike ride to the city centre. I'd head the other way, and in a similar time, I'd be in the middle of the forest. Now don't get me wrong, Sweden's not perfect. It has housing issues, decent argument made it takes the anti-sprawl approach too far at the opposite extreme. But Sweden's issue is that they're not building enough housing. When they do build it, they do it right. No matter whether you think density is good or bad, you can clearly see that compared to most of our European peers, Britain's cities are definitely doing something different. Something I'd say is definitely worse. It's something which is really hindering our ability to use some natural advantages that should make us a leading country in Europe. It's not like we're alone in this. Germany's making things harder for itself in this way too. And hey, just to cheer you up, let's all laugh at America. For my first example, here's the Raleigh urban area, chosen for being pretty standard and containing a rip-off Durham. Some other American cities though, like Dallas, St. Louis, LA, even Chicago, which isn't what you'd expect from watching it on TV. But at least we're not that bad, right? But hey, it's 2025, does "at least we're better than America" really mean anything anymore? We're not running away from a bear here. Just being better than someone else doesn't do us much good. The only ones we're cheating are ourselves. And besides, if there's one thing America's not short on, it's space. Despite it being an inferior way to do things, in America it is sort of practical in the short term. They brute force their traffic issues with bazillion lane motorways. It's not as good as actually, using their brains to solve their problems properly, but it sort of works-ish. In Germany too, the country's more than twice the size of England. They have a lot more space to work with than we do. In Britain, we just didn't have the resources to try and brute force things. With the UK, it's absolutely not a choice. We absolutely need to try and use our space a bit more efficiently, and this means that we do need to start building denser cities. We should be looking at our neighbours and seeking to learn from those places that have things right. It's no shame in seeing what works for others and trying to copy it. And hey, I see you sniggering over there, Canada. Didn't think I forgot you. Here's Toronto and Montreal, two of the country's major cities. Canada, if America jumped off a cliff, would you do it too? Eh? Conclusion then, so what am I saying here? Am I proving that former Tory MP right? You know the one that had the scare stories about the UK turning into East Berlin? Which, by the way, what? It'd be fantastic if the UK was even a smidge more like East Berlin. Anyway. No, not at all. When I say we need to increase our population density, I didn't mean we need to build gigantic 1960s-style commie blocks all over the shop. According to the 2021 English census, areas like this, Heaton and the East End of Newcastle, they have a density which is easily over 10,000 people per square kilometre. Now, this is cheating a bit. It's zooming right in on just the houses and excluding all the shops and schools and green space and all the other stuff that's needed as part of any half-decent town. In the West End of Newcastle, we can zoom right in on a tiny census block which has 28,000 people crammed into just a few streets of 2- and 3-storey buildings. There is always the risk of taking this "let's just look at where the people are" thing too far. I mean, hey, let's focus right down on the chair where I'm sitting at this moment. Bam! There you go, 2 million people per square kilometre. Obviously daft. Though looking at things on a national level is too far to one extreme, it is possible to go too far the other way. There's no such thing as totally objective data. Interrogate data long enough and it'll confess to anything. As we saw earlier though, official government statistics do show that new builds in Britain over the past few decades have fallen under the numbers we should be aiming for. If we look at Newcastle City Council's estimates on what density you can expect of different sorts of housing, it's clear to be seen that a good mix of traditional British terraced houses and low-rise flats more than meets the criteria for building a viable neighbourhood. Not that we should bark at going higher, of course. Why do we have to be stuck in this idea that 99% of what we build has to be bungalows and 2-storey houses? Would another floor or two really hurt? Building denser doesn't mean just jumping right from the blues of my charts 2-storey detached houses all the way up to absolutely mad Hong Kong skyscraper levels. There is a fair bit in between. And no, I never said everyone needs to live in a flat. A good mix of housing sizes is what we need. And let the screams of hypocrisy begin, I don't live in a flat. I barely have enough space for my family as it is. I want a bigger house. But you see, when I bought me 2-bed semi, I didn't have kids and remote working was a once or twice a week thing, rather than every single day. I didn't know how soon all that would be changing. Back then, 2 bedrooms was perfect for me and my partner's needs. As our family's grown, so's our needs. If I cast my mind back even further, back to when I was a single idiot in my early 20s, back then, even having a separate living room was a bit of a la-di-da extravagance. A bedsit would have done us just fine. Preferably one where I could just roll out of a pub in the city centre and right into bed, or close enough to work that I could squeeze in some vital extra minutes of sleep. And I might have spent a lot of my time drawing fantasy metro maps, but I don't think I was that weird as a single 20-something guy. What I needed, what I wanted, was something which just isn't widely available in the UK. I needed a cheap and cheerful little 1-person flat. But no, I couldn't have that. I had to get a room in a subdivided 4-bedroom house out in Jesmond or Heaton. Just the type of house I'd currently like to buy for my family, but wouldn't be able to easily afford because all the landlords had turned them into HMOs. Oh boo-hoo, woe's me, tiny violin out. This bloke's upset he can't afford a big posh house. He has it so hard with his wee little house that he bought of his own money. If any southerners are listening, I bet you're livid. But you know what? All the UK's problems aren't about me. I wasn't that weird as a young'un, but statistically speaking, with my multiple kids, I am pretty weird today. The demand in the UK is clearly leaning ever more and more towards smaller households. Our existing stock just doesn't match our population needs, which is why you get so many large family homes MacGyvered into HMOs. Mad idea here, but why don't we provide for those people who want 1-bed flats by default? Why do we leave it up to the landlords to chop up big houses into approximation of what we actually need? Why do we let certain developers chase the easy money of building quasi-detached houses all over the place? I mean, look at the state of this new development. Am I out on the edge of Alnwick or something? No, I'm in Newcastle, right next to the Zone A metro station. It's a bonny enough estate, great they kept some of the trees that were there before intact. But geez, these houses, that's not what we need. What's the point in that? This trend for quasi-detached housing is just so stupid. All the disadvantages of detached housing, with few of the advantages. If we built a healthier mix of housing, dotted about more wee flats, upstairs for the young uns, downstairs for the old uns, then this would be great for the individuals struggling for just meeting their basic housing needs. It'd be great for the families who want to buy something bigger, and it'd be great for the country overall, with the higher density bringing all of the benefits for nature, for the economy, for services, for social cohesion, for general good crack. You might moan and say, oh, but I like me town as it is, I don't want more density, which, okay, so you're one of those who want to concrete over the whole countryside then. That's what you support. Or maybe you're just happy with the housing crisis as it is. At the minute, there is a lot of talk about building on the green belt, which, grey belt and all that, even the proper green belt isn't exactly all a beauty spot, I know. I'm far from a NIMBY, I'm not saying never here. But we do need to step careful. Give the developers half a chance to build more car-centric sprawl, and that's just what they'll do. And that's just not the best way to house our population. It'd be solving the immediate housing crisis, whilst worsening a million other issues. If you look at house prices in the UK, in London, Edinburgh, Brighton, the places that do have an alright density, they also tend to be amongst the most expensive places to live. Actions speak far louder than words, and people clearly want to live in lively, walkable cities. To be totally fair for all this, if you're from the planning board of one of our major cities, then I'm probably preaching in the choir. Nottingham City Council, for instance, recommends 9,800 per square kilometre. There's definitely widespread recognition out there that building dense is the right idea. Nonetheless, we just seem to keep doing it, continuing with the same mistakes we've been making for the past 70 years. Any actual conclusion in this conclusion bit then? Aye. Let's build more bloody houses! That'd be good. But let's not forget the flats as well. Let's stop throwing a fit every time someone suggests building our 2 stories. We'll get a lot more bang for our buck for flats. This goes especially in our big cities, but even in our smaller towns, if we focus in on transport hubs and get some decent transit-oriented development there, that'd be nice. It's a key way we can breathe more life into our towns. I'm not saying here the denser the better. I wouldn't want to live in Hong Kong with its famous cage houses, but that's a ridiculous extreme and not a good counter-argument. Balance is the key. And Britain's density spread's currently as balanced as a drunk flamingo on a unicycle during a gale. A dense core, lower density as you get out into the fringe, all properly built around public transport and cycling infrastructure. That's what we need. Let's be having it. If we let the city be the city, then the country can be the country. Building on some green fields is inevitable if we want to solve the housing crisis, but if we put a bit more thought into what we're actually building, then this can be less than you think. And if we can sort the housing crisis, well, that's a big weapon taken out of the hands of shady groups' efforts to get work and people believing that foreigners are the root of all our problems. Which does give some context to why they're into their 15-minute city conspiracies, the hatred of bikes and general NIMBYism. Anyway, that's a side win. Building properly would actually make the country a lot nicer in its own right. And it'd free up a ton of resources to focus on the actual problems, make life in Britain today somewhat less than ideal. It's not rocket science. Our peer nations manage it just fine. That's it then. End of the video. On your way out, here's some more cities with emoji commentary.